Hello and welcome to India's World. The terrorist strike at the Indian Air Force base at Pathankot came a week after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's unscheduled visit to Lahore to wish his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz-e-Sherif on his birthday. The Indian Prime Minister was perhaps trying to create a positive atmosphere to revive bilateral talks with Pakistan. However, the Pathankot terrorist strike has put his government in a tough spot. His dilemma is that he had earlier declared that terror and talks cannot go together, and now a major terrorist strike has taken place while the foreign secretaries of India and Pakistan are scheduled to meet on January 15th. The latest attack in Pathankot comes in a long series where every attempt by India to improve relations with Pakistan has evoked this kind of a response. Thus, the Lahore bus trip of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was followed by Kargil in 1999. When the Agra summit failed in 2001, the Indian Parliament was attacked. When Indian forces were deployed on the border in response, there was the attack on Kaluchak in May 2002, and the two countries almost came to war. After the Musharraf-Manmohan talks ran into rough weather and Musharraf did not get what he wanted, there were the Mumbai serial train bombings and the Mumbai terror attacks of 2008. When the two prime ministers met in Ufa last July, and the response we found was an attack in Gurdaspur. And now we have the terrorist strike in Pathankot. To discuss terrorist attacks on India originating from Pakistan and their impact on India-Pakistan relations, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. My guests today are Ambassador Satyabrata. He's been India's High Commissioner to Pakistan and to South Africa, Deputy High Commissioner to London and Dhaka, as well as Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations. He was also a member of the National Human Rights Commission. We have with us Ambassador Vivek Katju. He retired as a Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs and has served as India's Ambassador to Afghanistan, Myanmar and Thailand. He handled the Pakistan desk of the Foreign Office for a record number of 6 years. And we have with us Mr. Seshadri Chari, a former editor and strategic affairs expert. He's a senior member of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, RSS, but is now in the Bharatiya Janata Party. He's head of the Foreign Policy Department of the BJP. I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Ambassador Pal, let me begin with you. What kind of challenge does the terrorist attack in Pathankot pose to Prime Minister Modi's attempt to resurrect the peace process with Pakistan? And what has happened to his precondition that there can't be talks while terrorism continues?
I think that is the biggest challenge for him. I think clearly he needs to explain to the country, and being such a superb communicator, we would expect him to, that there are no other options available, and that now to call off the talks would be to play into the hands of those who organize these attacks precisely to derail any attempt between Pakistan and India to move from confrontation to cooperation.
Ambassador Katju, are there two ways of looking at terrorist attacks originating in Pakistan against India? One, the view that is held by the liberal intelligentsia, including Ambassador Pal, that look, terrorism should not be allowed to derail the peace process. And there's another held by people in Pakistan who say that unless there is terrorism, India will not discuss the agenda that Pakistan wants. So would you say that the policy of terrorism against India is used both for promoting talks at times and at other times scuttling it or conditioning the talks?
Let me illustrate this point. In Bharat, you yourself will recall, and the person will remain unnamed, but a very, very senior Pakistani had said at a lunch, private lunch, when I had said that what is the need to now foment terrorism, now that we are talking, and this was in the 1990s, and I quote him in Hindi, he says, "Agar hum ye sab nahi karenge, to aap baat kyun karenge?" So it illustrates exactly the point that you are making. I cannot accept the proposition that talks are an end in themselves. I think that's a meaningless proposition. Now, Mr. Modi has decided, after giving a series of concessions to the Pakistan generals, or showing flexibility, if you want a diplomatic phrase, to engage Pakistan. The Pakistani generals who are in control of the Pakistani apparatus when it comes to India have responded by this attack, and it's quite clear that they are behind them. Only the naive would believe that they are not. Given this, what should be our response? To my mind, whatever the process was can remain. But before that, the Pakistani NSA has some hard explaining to do and action to be taken. If that doesn't happen, then I'm afraid the Pakistani generals will be convinced and they will show to the world and to India that Mr. Modi is just like his predecessors and that for all the positions that he has taken, and he is a strong leader, the strength is a little wanting.
Okay. Seshadri, do you think that the sources of terror in both the cases, those that are an attempt to force talks and terrorism that is used for conditioning the talks, are these other sources of this terror different, or is it the same source? In which case, it's a dual strategy being followed by the Pakistani establishment.
No, I don't think the source is the same, because if you very clearly indicate the Pakistani army, which is the source of all the terror attacks, see, close on the heels of this, another attack has taken place in Afghanistan also.
Yeah.
So if you conjuncture with these two attacks, what is evident is these attacks could have been carried out by different units, different organizations, outfits, but basically they are both controlled by the army. Therefore, it is the headquarters that is actually acting against
So you're saying
India.
it's the same source which...
So the same source is derailing the talks.
And the
But
same
we cannot
source
say that the same source is responsible for forcing India and Pakistan to talk. No, it is not. India has always maintained that we are prepared to talk to whoever is calling the shots in Pakistan. Unfortunately, it was Musharraf who became the president when we had to talk. Otherwise, we were never comfortable talking to the army, except in case of Musharraf. Whereas he had come out of his uniform at the time. Nawaz Sharif, yes, we want to talk to the political establishment, and we have made it very clear to the Pakistani sides that we want a political establishment versus the political establishment in India to talk. But any talk with the political establishment in Pakistan cannot be successful unless Pakistan is successfully able to bring the army on board. We know this fact, but still we continue talking to the Pakistani political establishment.
Okay. Mr. Paul, but I thought the premise of Mr. Modi's U-turn on Pakistan was that the army was on board. I mean, that's what we read in the papers, saying that government sources say this, that Pakistan army is on board. So what happened to that? If the premise is wrong, then the U-turn was wrong.
I completely agree with Chari and Vivek that an attack like this could not have happened without the support of the Pakistani or segments of the Pakistani military establishment. Where I disagree with them is in the assessment that this is the collective of the Pakistani army deciding to scupper the talks. Clearly, there are elements within the Pakistani army establishment that do not want any sort of movement towards a possible rapprochement, because we are nowhere close to a rapprochement. We are starting the process.
Yeah.
They don't even want the process to be started. At the moment, I think they are perhaps creating as many complications for their own establishment as they are certainly for the Indian Prime Minister. Talks are not an end in themselves, but talks are a means to the objective that you have. And if there were any other options available, certainly those should be explored. But we have looked at them and they haven't worked. So therefore, I think now to give in to them would be to concede defeat at the outset.
Okay, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but we need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the possible impact of the Pathankot terrorist strikes on India-Pakistan talks. Vivek, you wanted to say something. You were shaking your head vehemently.
No, I see no evidence of a split in the Pakistan army. There may be differences of opinion, but I cannot believe that the Pakistan army is not a professional army controlled by the army chief. It would be a very audacious thing for any officers in the Pakistan army, and we know that there have been coup attempts, etc. But they were in the past and by fairly junior officers. Okay. Of taking on such a big step without having at least an assurance that it will not be looked askance by the top leadership. As far as exploring options are concerned, and I don't mean crude options, I don't think we've ever done it, because we've always had this feeling that the stability of Pakistan is in our interest. And we've also had this fond hope that political parties in Pakistan, the political class and civil society will one day be able to come up.
But
these are fond hopes. They are not rooted in reality.
Okay, we will discuss options in a bit. Seshadri.
No, two things about this army thing. Although the army is responsible, I don't think I'd agree with Ambassador Katju that there is no division as far as these aspects are concerned in the army.
Yeah.
The army could be divided on certain other issues which are probably with the internal dynamics of Pakistani politics. But when it comes to dealing with India and when it comes to fomenting terror on India, I think the army is a monolithic organization in Pakistan which controls everything. All these non-state actors are also inter alia controlled by them. It is funded by the army. Therefore, there is no difference between the army, ISI and the non-state actors.
Okay, so
Could I
quickly,
make a
because
quick
I want to
comment?
move on to other things.
I want to make a quick comment. It is absolutely true that the Pakistani army is a professional army. It is, however, an army that is run by individuals. It is not a monolith. When I was there, I was told that General Musharraf, as Chief of Army Staff and as President, took 2 years from his assurance in 2004 that no territory under the control of Pakistan would be allowed to be used for terrorism to get that implemented. So it took a serving Chief of Army Staff 2 years to get his own subordinate officers.
So who are the people who are upset with the peace process in the Pakistan
There
army?
are elements. I mean, from Zia's time, the entire induction of the Pakistani officer corps has been on the basis that you are now Ghazis. So
Okay,
if you have that
Vivek,
mindset-
let me ask you a question, Vivek. You can also add on to what or counter whatever Ambassador Pal is saying. If Pakistan has not been able to get its way with India, whether on Kashmir or any other contentious issue through military force, then why oppose a dialogue?
I think the Pakistani army's mindset or their way of thinking on India is very different from conventional thinking. They think that defiance of India is necessary in order to ensure that the normal disparities between India and Pakistan do not ever operate fully. It makes no rational sense for the Pakistan army to adopt policies and postures which it has historically has done and which it continues to maintain.
Okay.
You know, after a very brief, except for a very brief period from 47 to say 49 or so, Pakistan has been in a very different situation. It is, the state never had an army. It is an army with a state. Therefore, we cannot distinguish between the role of the army and the state in Pakistan. If the army is not coming to power now, it's only for their convenience. The army feels
Perhaps they're
that
not
it is
capable just
better.
now.
It is better not to take into the political step into the political boots of Islamabad. Rather, control Islamabad through these sources. Therefore, the army has to be taken on board. As far as our assessment of army not being on board is concerned, we are not talking to the army. I think whatever assurance the political establishment in Pakistan has given, we have gone on that basis. Therefore, that is one area where I disagree with Ambassador Katju, that it is for the Pakistani political establishment to come and tell us
And for
that
us
we are
to
sorry,
and
we went wrong in
and we are
this.
so incredulous that we believe whatever they say.
No, it's not a question of believe or not believe, and it's also not the question of being
Okay,
incredulous.
quickly, Vivek.
The question is that we have to trust the political establishment in Pakistan if we want peace with that
All right,
country.
Chari Sahib, with all humility, I would submit that your argument is flawed. Why? If you once say that the Pakistan army is an army with a state, then the political class is a non-entity. It doesn't matter. And therefore, whatever the political class tells you, ipso facto should not matter.
Correct, but we have to deal with the political
All right,
class
okay.
as far as they are in power. That's what I'm saying.
They are not in power. The
all
army
right.
is in power.
No,
Okay,
politically
let me
they are
ask
in power.
Ambassador Pal a question. Do you think the Pakistani establishment actually uses a fairly complex strategy to deal with India? You know, they frighten the West by saying that Pakistan has got a low nuclear threshold. Their nuclear doctrine is not based on no first use like India's. And on the other hand, they keep on using terrorism against India. Now, if India reacts because Pakistan has crossed certain red lines, the West sort of comes down heavily on India and says, but look, the nuclear threshold is very low. We don't want a nuclear war. So this region always gets defined in terms of nuclearization. And under that umbrella, terrorism is justified, or you can't do anything about it.
No, I think the generals in Pakistan can blackmail the West, and they have successfully. They did it in 2002 and they've continued to do it now. But I think they know too that any attempt at nuclear blackmail with India taken beyond a point would fail. Because if their current doctrine is to use intermediate nuclear forces to stop the advance of the Indian strike force, that means the Indian strike force in Pakistan, which means the use of nuclear weapons not on Indian targets in India, but on Indian targets inside Pakistan, well inside Pakistan, which means really bringing the temple down on yourself. I don't think they have the Masada complex. They aren't actively seeking martyrdom. So I don't think this is a bluff that will work with India.
Okay. Vivek, earlier you were talking about options. So I've heard you say in the past that the answer to low-intensity warfare is low-intensity warfare. The answer to conventional warfare is conventional war. And answer to nuclear is, God forbid, a nuclear response. So what should be India's response when Pathankot happens or when Gurdaspur happens?
Low-intensity warfare is not bomb for bomb. Let's be clear. Low-intensity warfare, in my definition, is the emasculation of state structures. And I do believe we have it in our power. Should we be committed to this process to emasculate the Pakistan state? The problem is this fear that we have that instability in Pakistan would harm us irreparably. I think that fear is wrong. And it is now time that we examine the very postulates of our Pakistan policy.
Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ambassador Katju on this point, of course. The fact is, we have all been discussing whether a strong Pakistan is good for India or a weak Pakistan is good for India. Of course, no Pakistan is good for India,
Exactly.
but that's a different point. So if we don't have to move towards no Pakistan. They will themselves move towards it. Seeing the situation in Karachi and Balochistan and Northwest Frontier province, Pakistan is set for disintegration if they pursue this kind of a policy for long. Therefore, it is in the interest of the political establishment. And don't forget, for Nawaz Sharif, this is once bitten, twice shy. He has already faced, he has been thrown out of political power once by the army.
Yeah.
And if he wants to continue this process, and if he wants to give in to the army in such a manner, it's high time that he has to think of his own future and also the future of the political establishment in that country.
Okay, we need to take a break again at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Stay with us, don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing the impact of the Pathankot terrorist strikes on India-Pakistan talks. You wanted to say something before we went on the break.
No, I simply wanted to say that breaking up Pakistan, destabilizing Pakistan doesn't serve India's interests. I mean, we've broken up Pakistan once. The creation of Bangladesh did not necessarily add to India's security. The other point is that I completely disagree with Vivek that the postulate is wrong, that a secure, stable Pakistan is in India's interest. Apart from anything else, the report on climate change of the fifth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel shows the likely impact on Pakistan and on northwestern India of climate change. Instability there will lead to chaos. That chaos will spill over borders. It simply does not help India to have an unstable
Pakistan. You made the point. Vivek, do you think Pakistan's attitude towards India is shaped not only by its desire to wrest Kashmir, but also, let's say, equally by trying to push India out of Afghanistan? So could it be that the Pakistan army was upset with the Lahore visit because it followed Modi's speech in Afghan parliament where he, without naming Pakistan, blamed Pakistan for the woes of Afghanistan?
I think that was a factor. In fact, I'm on record. I've written about it extensively that one of the reasons why, to my mind, Nasir Janjua was not present at the meeting was Mr. Modi's formulations in his excellent speech to the Afghan parliament, and I think what he said needed to be said. It was entirely appropriate. And if the Pakistanis were unhappy about it, the generals, so be it. But this question, if I'll just take half a minute, this question that Pakistan in its present geographical contours is in our interest, I think is fallacious. If Balochistan was not there, if the frontier was not there, Punjab would be a weakened Punjab, and it's Punjab that is really causing us so much trouble. And we should aim for that, not that we need to actively work for that. But on one point, if you permit, I think what is to be done now, the point that I was making earlier was that is it unreasonable for Mr. Doval to expect that his newfound friend, Nasir Janjua, would call him and would explain all that has happened and then ensure that action is taken against the judge?
Well, let's hope he's called him. I don't know. Maybe it's not in the public domain.
Well,
but
if it is not, it should be.
Yeah. Seshadri, you had earlier also mentioned the attack that in Mazar-e-sherif on the Indian consulate. Do you think that the Pathankot attack and the Mazar-e-sherif attack were deliberately timed to be simultaneous, to tell India that, look, you want talks, that they'll be on our terms, not on your terms, and two, we'll do everything to reduce your footprint in Afghanistan?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are two major irritants as far as these two attacks are concerned. One was what Ambassador Katju very rightly said, that the stance that the Indian Prime Minister took in Afghanistan has really irritated. And moreover, for a long time, if you see about 6, 7, 8 months or so, the Afghan establishment is also highly cut off with what Pakistan has been doing, and they are not very happy with the Pakistani situation. So they have also moved closer to India to a very large extent, number one. And then there are international forces also which want India to act directly in Afghanistan over the head of Pakistan to a very large extent, which we have been doing also.
What are these international forces? Would you name them? Because America and China are actually encouraging Pakistan to play a role in
encouraging Pakistan, but they also want a direct link between India and Afghanistan as far as the reconstruction process is concerned, which we have been doing also. And we have made our displeasure very clear that we will not be comfortable dealing with Afghanistan only through Pakistan, and this the Americans and the Chinese have both agreed and accepted also to a very large extent. But of course, that's a very different subject, so we won't go into the details of it now. But another thing is, the army has also been very categorically telling the Pakistani political establishment that you cannot talk about peace with India, sidelining us. Okay. And that is the
that
issue.
Point you made,
that is the issue.
That is the issue. That point.
That is the issue, and therefore we must expect the political establishment to come clean as far as this is concerned. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the political establishment has already conveyed to India. Of course, they have not said that, they have not condemned the Pakistani army, which I don't think they will do. But I think we will have to bring to their notice.
Well, this is news to me. But let's talk about what will happen now. There have been reports that India will raise the issue of Jaish-e-Mohammed, the group that is believed to be behind Pakistan, this Pathankot attack, and ask for action against Masood Azhar. Now, why should Pakistan do this now? They have not taken action against the perpetrators of Mumbai terror attacks. They've done nothing on Dawood Ibrahim. They did nothing after the Kandahar hijacking. Why should they now suddenly act against Jaish-e-Mohammed because India wants to hold foreign secretary level talks and you think that should be on the agenda?
Well, we don't know if indeed they will, but clearly I agree that it is essential for the NSA to convey to his counterpart whatever we know, any evidence we have, information that we have that establishes that this is a Jaish operation. Because if indeed Jaish continues to be an organization banned, proscribed in Pakistan, then it is in Pakistan's interest as much as ours to take action against them.
Okay. Vivek, now do you think foreign secretary level talks should be held as scheduled? So should they be rescheduled with certain preconditions, or should they be called off?
Look, I find this binary talks or no talks to be...
Not binary. I gave you 3 options. That's not binary.
No. Please hear me out. I think what is more important, what we need to focus on is what do we talk about? At the moment, our talk has to be on terror. We've got to now ensure that the first item, which was mentioned in the UFA joint statement, is adhered to. We let it pass because of concessions or flexibility, call it what you will. Now it has to be restored. And now the 2 NSAs must meet exclusively to talk on terror. And exclusively the Pakistanis must respond, not obfuscated with Kashmir and all other things.
Okay, so do you think the Pakistanis will agree?
The question is...
If they didn't agree earlier, why would they agree now?
No, the question is we should insist, as Ambassador Katju says, we should insist that now whatever talks we will have, we were prepared for talks on all the subjects, including terror, but now since you have played it out, We will talk only terror.
So no
Number one.
comprehensive talks,
Number
only
two,
terror.
There can be no comprehensive talk.
Okay.
There can be no talks on Kashmir. There can be no talks on any other issue unless they come clean on this issue of terror. A. B.
Yeah.
As far as our options are concerned, I think India will have to prepare to hit Pakistan where it hurts, especially the army where it hurts. How do we do it? What time we choose? What is the place we do it? Is all a matter of.
We've really run out of time. We've run out of time. I have no option but to close this discussion here on this sad note of demanding that we go to war almost.
No, I'm not saying we do go to war. No, I didn't say that.
Well,
Response is different from war.
Okay, yeah. All right.
I agree.
All right. So I have to thank you, Mr. Seshadri, Chari, Ambassador Vivek, Katju, Ambassador Satyabrata, for participating in this discussion. That is all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Until then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's World.